A verdict is handed down in the Prince Hepburn trial, and it took jurors just over 1 hour to make a decision.
The Senate debates ways to a safer Bahamas.
And election fever hits the campus of the College of the Bahamas. The Bahamas Tonight, the National Report, starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This segment of the news is brought to you by BTC, powered by Lime.
Breaking news tonight. Good evening, everyone. I'm Keishla Adderley.
And I'm Chris Saunders.
Guilty of murder is the verdict against contractor Prince Hepburn. The jury handing down that verdict late this afternoon.
That verdict came just after 2 this afternoon. Fern Carey was at the court as the verdict was handed down.
After just over an hour of deliberations, a jury has determined that Prince Hepburn is guilty of killing his girlfriend Nellie Brown Cox 2 years ago. The 5-man, 7-woman jury retired at 1:07 this afternoon to consider the charge of murder and manslaughter, and by about 2:30 they had already completed their deliberations. Before they retired, however, Justice Indra Charles told jurors that in order to convict Prince Hepburn of murder, it must be unanimous, which means all of them had to agree Hepburn was guilty as charged. The judge also informed jurors if they did not find Hepburn guilty of murder, then they had to consider whether or not he was guilty of manslaughter by way of diminished responsibility, which significantly affected his responsibility for the crime. And in order to convict Hepburn of manslaughter, 8 of the 12 had to agree. When the verdict was handed down, Hepburn appeared calm, the same way he had appeared throughout the trial. When asked by the court if he wished to say anything, Hepburn started to speak, but was stopped by his attorney, Muriel Ducille. Meantime, Ducille told reporters outside court that he will be filing an appeal after the Easter holiday.
Based on the horrific nature of the offense, and totally discounted what Dr. Neville had to say, whose evidence went uncontroverted, being an expert. Also, the fact that the prosecution sought to call Dr. Dodrick Bowe, who had not given a report, and whose report, when looked at, had an acute psychotic behavior which came about in a sort of quick way. So all this was discounted, and all of this was on the record from day one. The defense had not come to say that he was totally exonerated. He was partially responsible, but his responsibility was predicated on his diminished responsibility based on the circumstances of the case.
Ducille also said he was surprised that jurors returned a verdict so quickly.
That went totally uncontroverted. The jury having returned its verdict in such a short time simply means that there was absolutely no deliberation. They did not sit down to really consider the facts in the case.
Now, lead prosecutor Franklin Williams declined an on-camera comment. However, he indicated that the Crown will not be seeking the death penalty. Now, Hepburn won't be sentenced until May 22nd. In the meantime, the court has ordered a psychiatric and social inquiry report. Fern Carey, ZNS Network News.
Senators began debate on the government's mid-year budget statement today. Minister of State for National Security, Senator the Honorable Keith Bell, led off the debate on the government's mandate to reduce crime and create a safer Bahamas. As Cyan Thompson reports, Minister Bell stated that despite the noise in the market, there's been a downward trend in crime under the Christie administration. He also announced what's being hailed as the single largest investment in the Royal Bahamas Defense Force.
Minister of State for National Security, the Honorable Keith Bell, in his contribution Wednesday, announced that the Royal Bahamas Defense Force is set to receive $200 million for new fleet and infrastructural upgrades, considered the largest investment made in the Defense Force's history.
I am pleased to report that our Cabinet has authorized the execution of a letter of intent with Diamond Shipyards for the construction and delivery of 9 vessels for the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. We're making it happen, Madam President. We're making it happen. The estimated cost of the works is some $188 million to $200 million. That is for the acquisition of these vehicles.
Among other national security issues, Senator Bell stated that for far too long, Bahamian fishermen have reportedly been bombarded with poachers.
Is in the area of the Great Bahama Bank, where the fish is in abundance, the resources are there, our resources. Our fishermen are having problems. What the Dominican fishermen do, Madam President, is that they go and fish the banks. And when they know we have a Defense Force vessel in the area coming, what do? Go in the area of our brothers to the west. So they go in that area, which is outside of, I'm talking about Cuba. I want the Bahamians to understand this, because the Bahamians, when you hear something is happening, we need to ensure that we are all on one accord and we stand solid on this. And so what they do is they go in those areas, which makes it very, very difficult, and it's very, very dangerous for our vessels and our Defense Force officers.
Senator Bell also reported on reduction of crimes of all types in the Senate Wednesday, except for armed robbery. He stated it was no easy feat, but was a result of hard work by the Royal Bahamas Police Force, Urban Renewal Centers, the School Policing Program, and the Tourism Policing Unit. He gave this update on closed-circuit television expected to be mounted throughout the capital.
As of March 1st, 2013, cameras have been installed in 15 locations in New Providence, resulted in video coverage from 21 cameras being displayed in the command center. It is expected over the next few weeks that a further 40 cameras will be installed, with the footage being displayed on the video wall in the control center.
For the ZNS News Network, I'm Cyan Thompson.
Right now, it's just under 2 days before teams from across the Caribbean flock to the Thomas A. Robinson National Stadium to compete for gold and bragging rights at this year's BTC Carifta Track and Field Championships. Well, to ensure that the games are on all systems go, yesterday, the nation's chief, Prime Minister Perry Christie, B3A's officials and his delegation toured the new state-of-the-art facility. LaDawn Davis was also on that tour and has all the details.
Catapulting athletics to the forefront and inspiring the nation's young athletes is a major goal for Prime Minister Perry Christie. After an hour-long tour of the Thomas A. Robinson National Stadium on Tuesday, Mr. Christie told ZNS News that he's extremely pleased with the work being done to make this year's Carifta Games a successful one.
Dr. Johnson indicated to us that he needed to have improvements done to the practice track as well as improvements done to the main track, notwithstanding the gift of the Chinese. And we've been able to meet the time requirements on both, as you can see here. And Mr. Sands has indicated to me that on a world basis that maybe Beijing, but that he cannot think of any practice track where the athletes warm up for the event that is as close to the national stadium.
Although ticket sales are going pretty well, officials from the Bahamas Association of Athletic Associations, or B3As, are making every effort to encourage Bahamians to purchase seats on the eastern side of the stadium for the opening ceremony. When asked if he expects a large turnout from Bahamians, here's how the Prime Minister responded.
We want them to know that there is nothing like the inspiration of a crowd behind an athlete who's running a race. And this is the tradition we have here, and we expect the people of this island to turn out in significant numbers to ensure that our athletes have the support they deserve.
While reflecting on the men's 4x400-meter relay team that struck gold at last year's Olympic Games, the nation's chief is hoping not only for a good medal standing at the Carifta Games, but for a gold repeat in the 2016 Olympics in Brazil.
We have to do a lot of planning, a lot of training, a lot of support for the athletes, because we know Brazil is coming up, and we know that we can do things now to help prepare our athletes, or better prepare our athletes for that Olympic Games in Brazil.
But for the most part, it seems as if it's an all systems go for the 2013 BTC Carifta Games that kicks off on March 29th through April 1st. LaDawn Davis, ZNS Network News.
As the Bahamas Petroleum Company prepares to embark on oil exploration in Bahamian waters, which may not take place for another year, the company's chief revealed today the biggest challenge the company is facing.
Yeah, our Andrew Knowles was out there today as he went and talked about it. Andrew, it's been 2 weeks since they announced exploratory drilling. What's the next step now?
Well, Chris, like you said, it's been 2 weeks since the government announced that it would allow exploratory drilling in Bahamian waters, and the Bahamas Petroleum Company's CEO Simon Porter revealing today that the company has one major hurdle to overcome before it gets to the stage of drilling.
The biggest challenge that we face at the moment is the design of the well. The well will be designed to drill to roughly 20 to 22,000 feet below the seabed. It'll be drilling in water of around 1,600 feet, which by today's standards is not very deep water at all.
5 oil wells have reportedly been drilled in the Bahamas before, and now we're told that BPC has already invested $50 million in its seismic and geologic studies to acquire data to plan the right location.
The location of the well will be inside our 4 licenses adjacent to the Cuban border. So roughly speaking, we're about 80 miles from Andros, so about 170 miles from Nassau. The closest landfall is actually 25 miles away, which is Cuba.
In addition to its well plan and design, Porter says they are also awaiting government's proposed regulatory measures for drilling.
The minister stated that the government was strengthening and modernising their regulations, which we welcome, and that will be put before Cabinet in the next couple of weeks. And of course, the well design will need to take into account those more stringent regulations and standards that we anticipate from the regulations.
The government decided to allow exploratory drilling to establish commercial viability ahead of any referendum on the future of oil development. As it stands, should oil be found, the agreement in place is that the government would automatically secure 25% of royalties. Porter says those royalty payments represent a long-term source of payment for the government.
I guess certainly we're pretty confident that we'd find hydrocarbons. It's whether it's in commercial quantities or not. That's the key thing.
Now, according to Mr. Porter, the anticipated cost to build the oil well is $120 million. He was the featured guest speaker this afternoon at the Bahamas Society of Engineers monthly meeting.
Well, an overall assessment was carried out by Environmental Health today at the Registrar General's office. This after workers left their post Tuesday morning because of a strong sewer odor emitting through the first and second floors of Shirley House.
But that wasn't the only issue highlighted yesterday. Bahamas Public Services Union President John Pinder also expressed major concern over the lack of security.
They used to have security there, no longer security there. And certainly, you know, that area raises quite a bit of revenue. I think they're the 3rd largest revenue collectors of the government. And so they were concerned that there's no security presence there. They also had this issue of not having a human resource manager for quite some time, and they felt as though the lack of a human resource manager certainly not too helpful to them as relates to them being able to get timely assessments and ensure that any recommendation for motions is sent up in a timely manner.
In our first look at weather, skies are clearing, meaning temperatures will plunge tonight. But outside of our studios just now, we have partly cloudy skies, temperature 68 degrees, relative humidity 49%, winds out of the north at 7 knots, your barometric pressure 1,021.1 millibars, that's 30.15 inches, and it is steady. But stay tuned, temperatures around the Farming Islands, travel and boating forecast is still to come.
Well, still to come tonight, election fever is in the air. COB students elect a president.
And then later on, find out what this is all about. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.